and said, loud enough for the whole damn room to hear, "Wow, look who dragged himself back. Even Mason looks too old for bedtime stories now." Couple people laughed. One of her cousins choked on wine and tried to cover it with a cough. Mason flinched and squeezed my hand harder. I kept my jaw locked and nodded at the table like I didn't hear a damn thing. The dining room was packed. Her family, some old neighbors I barely remembered, two of Claire's friends from her law firm, and not one familiar face who looked glad I showed up. The chair legs scraped as I pulled one out for Mason at the end of the table. He sat down without a word. I took the spot next to him. Claire was at the head, right where she always liked to be. Back straight, lips tight, bun wound so tight it looked like it hurt. She gave me that little sideways smirk, like she was already 3 steps ahead and enjoying every second. "Let's not pretend this is something it's not," she said, taking a sip of her wine like this was some regular Thursday night. "My dad rewrote the will. You're out. Said you were dead to him." Dead to him. Like I hadn't spent 5 years raising Mason after she threw her career in my face and told me I wasn't going anywhere. Like I hadn't tried, over and over again, to keep some kind of peace between us for Mason's sake. I leaned back in the chair, eyes on her, but I didn't take the bait. Not yet. Mason stared at his plate. His shoulders were tense, fists clenched in his lap. But he was quiet. Always was, unless something really needed saying. One of the lawyer friends muttered something to the woman next to her, probably about the will. Probably about me. Didn't matter. I looked around that table and saw exactly what they wanted me to see. A man walking in with nothing to his name, sitting in a house that used to feel like mine, watching everyone else act like I never existed. Quick note, before listening, share in the comments which city or country you're watching from, and let's continue. I wasn't there to argue. I wasn't there to grovel either. But something about the way Mason was holding himself, tight, bracing, told me this wasn't over. So I squared my shoulders, reached for the water glass in front of me, and said, "Let's hear it then." Claire didn't say another word after I told her to go ahead. She just gave a smug shrug and glanced toward the archway leading into the next room, like she was waiting for someone. That's when Mr. Hargrove walked in, same guy who'd sent the envelope. Thin, older man, real put together. Gray hair combed back, glasses with those thick black rims. He held a folder under his arm like it was carrying someone's last breath. My stomach turned. That house still smelled like lemon polish and fireplace soot, same as it did 10 years ago. And now I was back, sitting at that same damn table, surrounded by the same people who acted like I'd stolen something from them the day I left. Glenn leaned over to his wife, whispering. Claire tapped her wine glass with one long nail, keeping time with whatever power move she thought was coming. No one looked at me. Mason reached for a cracker and broke it in half without eating it. Mr. Hargrove cleared his throat. "This won't take long." He sat at the far end, opened the folder, and started sorting papers with the kind of precision that made my skin itch. Mason looked at me once, eyes steady, quiet. Same look he gave me 3 days ago when the envelope showed up. That was the first time I'd heard Robert's name in years. There wasn't a letter, not even a post-it. Just a formal card with Mr. Hargrove's firm printed in gold, the address to Claire's family house, and the time for today. I held it up. Looks like a setup. Mason had just nodded. "Maybe there's something you need to hear." Kid said it like a fact, like it was already decided. So I dusted off the same black suit I wore to my brother's funeral, pulled it off the dry cleaner's hanger, and tried not to think too much about how tight the collar felt. Mason dressed himself. Button down, little red clip-on tie he hadn't worn since 3rd grade picture day. I asked if he was sure he wanted to come. He just said, "Yeah, I should be there." Now, sitting next to him, watching Claire sip wine like this was just another board meeting, I felt like I'd walked into a courtroom with no defense. My palms were slick. I kept them under the table. Mr. Hargrove adjusted his glasses, looking over the pages in front of him. "I've been asked to read the last will and testament of Robert Bennett," he said. "This is the official notarized version on file as of 2 months ago." The room went still. Chairs creaked. Glenn sat up straighter. Claire crossed one leg over the other and folded her arms. Hargrove paused, looking at each face like he was scanning for landmines. Then he started reading. I tried not to react when Robert's name came out of the lawyer's mouth. Tried not to picture him slamming the door on me 10 years ago after I told him I was leaving Claire. He hadn't even let me speak. "I gave you everything," he'd said, voice low, shaking with rage. "And this is how you repay us?" I told him it wasn't about them, that Claire and I were tearing each other apart, and Mason needed out. But he didn't want to hear it. He shut the door. That was it. I never went back. Not until now. Mason shifted next to me, and I saw his hand move toward mine under the table, but he stopped short. Just let it rest on the wood between us. Across the table, Claire's friend, some sharp-faced woman I didn't recognize, pulled out her phone and started typing something. Texting or taking notes, I didn't know. Mr. Hargrove kept reading, voice calm and steady, and all I could think was, what the hell did Robert want with me now? Why bring me back into a room full of people who already wrote me off? Why let Mason watch it happen all over again? But I didn't say a word. I just sat there, shoulders back, fingers clenched, waiting for the knife to land. Mr. Hargrove turned to the first page and adjusted his glasses again. "To Claire Bennett," he said, "I leave full ownership of the family home located at 731 Orchard Lane, including all furniture, fixtures, and financial assets tied to said property." Claire didn't blink, didn't nod, didn't even pretend to act surprised. She just pressed her lips tighter and folded her hands in her lap like she was posing for a campaign poster. Her new husband, some investment guy named Trent, hair too perfect, smile too fake, gave her a quick little nod like a business deal just closed. To the right of them, Glenn puffed his chest. I could already see the next move coming. Mr. Hargrove continued, calm as a surgeon. "To Glenn Bennett, I leave ownership of the lake house at West Ridge and all assets associated with Bennett Contracting Services, including equipment, branding, and real estate holdings under the company." Glenn leaned back in his chair like a king being crowned. I thought he was going to light a damn cigar right there. One of his cousins slapped him on the shoulder. Claire's friend whispered something behind her hand. I sat there and watched the vultures pick the bones clean. "To Margaret Townsend," Hargrove went on, "I leave the full collection of restored vehicles located in the detached garage." Murmurs rippled down the table. One of the old cousins, red lipstick, way too much perfume, covered her mouth like she just won the lottery. Probably thought that cherry red '66 Mustang in the back was hers now. "To Adam and Teresa Holloway," Hargrove read, "I leave full rights to the parcel of land in Coconino County, Arizona, previously undeveloped." A few more quiet gasps, a half laugh. Someone said, "Oh my God," under their breath, but not a single word in my direction. The list went on. Smaller stuff. Jewelry, stocks, old rifles, art. The way Hargrove read it, steady and cold, it felt less like a reading and more like a body getting carved up, piece by piece. I gritted my teeth. Not because I wanted anything. Hell no. I just didn't like the way they were enjoying it. Like he was feeding them dessert, and I wasn't even allowed in the kitchen. Then he paused, cleared his throat, didn't look up. "And to my former son-in-law, Nathan Thomas." Every eye at the table shifted. Claire's smirk came back before he even finished the sentence. "No portion shall be distributed." That was it. No explanation. No second line. Just the sentence, like a knife between the ribs. My back hit the chair hard. Felt like the whole room tilted for a second. Like I'd stepped off a curb and never landed. Mason stiffened beside me, his fingers curled against his pants leg, knuckles white. Claire turned, slow and deliberate, and gave me that smug, almost sweet smile. "Told you it was pointless," she said. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't hurt. I was something else, something heavier. It was like the last nail in a box they built years ago, and today they finally shut the lid. Hargrove kept his eyes on the page, not looking at anyone now. "I've reviewed all instructions with my client prior to his passing," he said. "This will was signed, witnessed, and filed. It is, for all legal purposes, final." There was a pause. Not silence, just tension. The air buzzed with little whispers and chair legs shifting. Glenn let out a breath like he'd been holding it the whole time. One of Claire's lawyer friends scribbled something on a yellow notepad. I sat still. Dead still. Mason didn't move either. That line, "No portion shall be distributed," it echoed in my head. Robert's voice behind it, cold and final. Like he'd finally gotten the last word after shutting that door in my face 10 years ago. I leaned forward, hands clasped, and stared down the table. Nobody looked back. Claire adjusted her blazer and whispered something to Trent. Glenn raised his glass like it was over. The cousins were already trading looks, probably calculating what they'd flip and what they'd keep. And just when I thought it was done, when the whole damn circus was about to pack up, Mason let go of his napkin, sat up straighter, and looked across the table at Mr. Hargrove. "You forgot the video," he said. "You forgot the video," Mason said. Just like that. Calm, clear, straight into the middle of the room like he'd rehearsed it. The air sucked out of the place. Forks stopped moving. Someone whispered, "What video?" Claire's eyebrows pinched, just slightly. Glenn squinted like Mason had spoken a foreign language. Trent leaned forward, adjusting his cufflinks like he was preparing for some courtroom objection. My stomach dropped, hard. I felt Mason's hand grip mine under the table, strong for a 10-year-old. I looked at him, and he nodded, just once, then let go. He pulled a small envelope from his backpack, yellowed edges, looked like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. My name was on the front, but what stopped me cold was the handwriting beneath it. I recognized it instantly. That tight, slanted scrawl Robert used when signing birthday cards. "Only give this to Mr. Hargrove if it gets ugly." It got ugly. Mason held the envelope out. Mr. Hargrove blinked like someone just snapped him awake. "May I?" he asked. Mason gave it over without hesitation. Didn't even look nervous. Hargrove took a moment, slipped the letter opener from his briefcase and cut the top cleanly. Inside was a short note and a USB stick. He read the note silently, then read it again. When he looked up, his whole face had changed. Not shocked, more like resigned, like someone who just found a trap door under their feet and realized they had to step through it. "There's a video," he said, voice lower now, "from Mr. Bennett, dated roughly 6 weeks before the final will was filed. It appears to contain clarifications related to the estate." Claire's hand hit the table. That video wasn't included in any official record. "It was sealed by Mr. Bennett himself," Hargrove cut in, "and this note instructs me to play it immediately if certain circumstances occurred." "What circumstances?" Glenn asked, eyes darting. Hargrove didn't answer. He just turned to the bag he'd brought in, unzipped the front pocket, and pulled out a small laptop. I watched Claire shift in her seat. Her face didn't crack, but her hand curled into a fist against her thigh. Trent opened his mouth, then shut it, like whatever legalese he was ready to spit had just crawled back down his throat. The rest of the table was quiet. Nobody moved. Hargrove inserted the USB, tapped a few keys. The screen lit up with a pause icon, white against black, and then the old man's face appeared. Robert. He looked older than I remembered. Thinner, skin sagging under his eyes. The background was his office. I recognized the bookshelf, the clock, the antique globe. Same room he used to take me into on Christmas mornings to drink coffee before the chaos started. He was sitting behind the desk, posture still perfect, tie loosened just slightly. And then the video started. Hi, Nate. His voice punched through the speakers like a bell dropped into water. Claire's whole face went stiff. Glenn leaned forward, brow furrowed. I heard someone gasp. Could have been one of the cousins. Maybe that red lipstick aunt. Robert looked straight into the camera. If this is being played, I guess the will has already been read, he said. And I already know how that went. He paused. Not dramatic, just tired. His eyes shifted like he was reading notes, but the next words sounded like they came from memory. I'm guessing Claire didn't want you here. I'm guessing Glenn smiled too wide. And I'm guessing you, Nate, didn't say much, because you never did when you knew you were walking into fire. Nobody spoke. Not even Claire. I believed what Claire told me, Robert said. When you left. When you took Mason. I didn't ask questions. I just slammed the damn door. He let out a breath. His voice cracked just barely, but he kept going. That was my failure. I treated you like a thief, like you'd taken something from us. I never once thought maybe you were protecting your boy. Mason hadn't moved. His eyes were locked on the screen. I looked down for a second, just a second, and realized my hands were shaking. I met Mason once when you weren't around, Robert continued. Ran into him and his coach at that baseball field near Elm Street. He didn't recognize me, but I knew him. He looked away from the camera, swallowing hard. We talked, not long, but long enough for him to say something that stuck with me. He said, "My dad is where I feel safe." Silence. Total. Robert's voice dropped lower, and that's when I realized you didn't steal him. You saved him. My throat clenched so tight I could barely breathe. Claire's face had gone pale, drained of all that courtroom confidence. Robert looked back into the camera. So I changed the will. There's a new version. This one. He tapped something off screen. Maybe the draft Hargrove was reading from. I left everything, the main house, my savings, what's left of the business accounts, to Nathan Thomas, with the intent that it passes to Mason. There's also a college fund in a separate trust. Mason's name is on it. Claire jerked in her seat like someone had kicked her. You earned this, Nate, Robert said. Not with charm, not with apologies, with time, with the kind of quiet work men like me never respected when we should have. The screen froze on his face, eyes tired, jaw firm, the weight of a man who knew exactly what he'd waited too long to say. Hargrove didn't move to close the laptop. No one spoke. Not yet. The video hadn't even ended and the silence was already doing damage. Claire's smirk had vanished. She looked like she'd swallowed a battery. Glenn's mouth was half open, trying to process what just hit him. One of the cousins shifted in her seat like she suddenly had to pee. And me? I was staring at Robert's frozen face on the screen. Those eyes, that jaw, the tired way his shoulders slumped. I'd seen that desk before behind him. We used to sit there on Christmas Eve while the women finished wrapping gifts upstairs. He'd pour me scotch when I was 21 and talk about how he built his business from nothing. I never thought I'd see him there again. Not like this. Hargrove pressed a key. The video resumed, just a few seconds left. I know what this'll look like, Robert said. Maybe they'll call it guilt. Maybe they'll fight it. But I wrote this after thinking about it for months. I wanted to make it right, in my own way. He cleared his throat, glanced down, then back at the camera. You earned this, Nate. You stepped up, you stayed, you did what I never could. The screen faded to black. The room didn't move. It didn't even breathe. Then Claire shoved her chair back. The legs screeched across the hardwood like nails down a chalkboard. She stood up, stiff, mechanical, like she didn't know what her body was doing. No, she said. This is bullshit. This was not part of the final will. Hargrove looked up slowly, as calm as ever. There were 2 drafts. This video predates the notarized version by 3 weeks. The contents match the final changes exactly. Legally? You think I care about legally right now? She snapped. He was dying, probably confused. You saw the state he was in. Trent reached for her arm. but she yanked away. "Don't!" she hissed. Across from me, Glenn had gone pale. He wasn't yelling, not yet, but his eyes darted between Hargrove, the laptop, and me, like he was running numbers in his head. "He left me the lake house," Glenn finally said. "That's a signed document. That's final." "He left you ownership of the business," Hargrove replied. "But the property, the land the office sits on, that belongs to Nathan." I didn't even blink. I couldn't. I was still stuck on Robert's voice saying I earned it. Claire's face cracked then. Not a full break, just a flicker. Her lip twitched. She looked like she wanted to throw something but couldn't decide what. "This isn't real," she muttered. "He never forgave you. He told me. He said a lot of things," I cut in, standing up. My voice surprised even me. Calm, low, sharp enough to split bone. "But that video? That was real." She stared at me, and for once, she didn't have a damn thing to say. I looked down at Mason. He hadn't moved since the video ended. His eyes were still locked on the screen, but his hand was resting on mine again. Firm, steady, like he'd been holding me in place this whole time. "You knew?" I asked him. Quiet. He nodded. "I didn't see the video, but I knew it was there. He gave me the envelope last time I saw him." Claire spun around, her voice shaking. "You took him to see my father behind my back?" Mason cut in before I could answer. "He came to see me. Coach said some old man had been sitting in the bleachers for 2 games straight. Turned out it was him." "You didn't tell me," Claire snapped. "He told me not to," Mason said, just as sharp. "He wanted to see for himself." Glenn slammed his fist against the table. "So that's it? We're just handing over everything to him, after all these years?" "No one's handing me anything," I said. "You heard the man. He made his choice." Glenn stood. For a second I thought he was going to lunge. His eyes were wild, not angry, just lost, like everything he thought he was owed had been pulled out from under him. He didn't say another word, just stormed out the back door, out into the garden. Claire was still standing there, frozen. Trent put a hand on her shoulder, but she brushed him off. Then she picked up her bag and walked out without looking back. Some of the cousins followed, moving like sleepwalkers. I heard one of them mutter, "I can't believe this," as they disappeared into the hallway. I stayed standing, hands still on the back of my chair. My legs were shaking, but I didn't sit back down. Hargrove leaned forward, closing his folder gently. "There'll be paperwork," he said, voice low, "but everything's in order." Mason looked up at me, waiting. I gave him a small nod, jaw tight. My fingers gripped the top of the chair like it was the only thing keeping me upright. And just like that, the room started to empty. I nodded, still gripping the arms of the chair like they were welded to me. Mason didn't move, didn't blink, just kept sitting there like none of this surprised him, like he'd seen the whole damn thing play out in his head weeks ago. Across from us, the room unraveled in slow motion. Claire stood. One sharp motion, like a puppet string got yanked from above. She didn't say a word, didn't look at me or Mason or even Hargrove. Just grabbed her bag, clutched it against her ribs like a shield, and walked out the front door with her heels ticking against the floor. Trent scrambled after her, face beet red, mumbling something about damage control and timeline inconsistencies. His voice faded fast. The cousins, 3 of them, all from Robert's sister's side, looked like someone had turned them into statues. Then one by one they slipped out. Heads down, not a single goodbye. I watched Glenn last. He stayed behind for another minute, arms folded, mouth twitching like he wanted to fight the air. "You don't deserve it," he finally said. "I didn't ask for it," I replied. "You took his daughter, you took his grandson, and now you're walking out of here with his house." "No," I said, standing slowly. "I'm walking out of here with what he decided I earned." He shook his head, half laughing. He was old, weak, probably lost his mind. "He was clear as hell on that video," Mason said. Glenn turned his glare to Mason, but the kid didn't flinch, just stared back, calm and unshaken. "Careful, Glenn," I said. You start talking like that to my son, we're gonna have a real problem. He didn't respond, didn't even blink, just turned and walked to the side door, slamming it behind him harder than necessary. And then it was quiet. Hargrove reached forward, clicked the laptop shut, and slid it back into his briefcase. He straightened the stack of papers, tapped them once against the table, then looked at me and Mason again. There'll be some estate transfer paperwork coming your way. You'll need to sign a few things. Nothing complicated. Okay, I said. He hesitated, then added, he made it clear, in writing and on video. No loopholes, no back doors. This is yours now. Mason shifted in his seat. I looked down at him, and he gave a little shrug like this wasn't news to him at all. You knew? I asked. He nodded. I had a feeling. How long? Since that second baseball game. He didn't just show up. He stayed after. Talked to you? Asked questions, but he listened more. I ran a hand over my jaw, tried to process that. Robert, the same man who slammed the door in my face, sitting on metal bleachers just watching, trying to figure out what kind of man I'd become. Hargrove pushed his chair back. Unless you have questions, I'll head out. You're welcome to stay as long as you want. You'll get a formal notice in the mail with access to everything. I shook his hand. Thanks. He gave Mason a small nod, like the kid had done something grown men rarely managed. And then he was gone, briefcase tucked under his arm, the front door clicking shut behind him. Me and Mason were left alone in the wreckage. The dining room felt 10 times bigger now. Plates were half full, silverware out of place, wine glasses with lipstick smudges. It looked like a party where nobody had fun. I walked to the head of the table and stared at the chair Robert used to sit in. It was just wood and leather, but it felt heavy, like it still carried the weight of his name. I didn't touch it. Mason came up behind me, quiet as always. He didn't say anything, just stood with his hands in his pockets, scanning the room. What are you thinking? I asked him. That she's probably trying to call Grandpa's lawyer right now, he said. Maybe 3 different ones. She'll fail. I know. We stood there a moment, just breathing in the silence. She really thought she had it locked down, I said. That smirk, she thought it was hers. All of it. I nodded. That's how she's always been. Nothing's real to her unless she owns it. Mason looked up at me. You don't have to stay here. I know. But maybe you should. For a little while. I glanced around again. The place didn't feel like it used to. Not anymore. It didn't feel like enemy territory either. It just felt empty. Not in a bad way. More like a room waiting to be reset. Mason yawned. I looked at the clock. Nearly 10. Come on, I said. Let's clean up a little. Then we'll head out. He didn't argue. We started gathering plates, loading them into the kitchen sink. I tossed napkins in the trash, ran hot water, and let it fill the room with steam. Mason stacked cups. No one said much. We didn't have to. After 10 years of being erased, by Claire, by Robert, by every fake smile around that table, it felt like the silence finally belonged to me. We stayed a little longer after we cleaned up. I didn't say it out loud, but I needed it. Just 5 more minutes without someone glaring, judging, waiting for me to shrink again. The room was quiet, not awkward quiet, real quiet, like the storm passed and left something behind. That house, that table, those walls. I used to walk through them like I was trespassing. Now, everything felt still. Not warm, not cold, just still. Like it was waiting to be something new. I looked down at Mason. He was still holding my hand, same grip he used in the car when he was 5 and scared of thunder. Where'd you keep that envelope all this time? I asked. Top drawer, he said, under my socks. I raised an eyebrow. You didn't open it? Grandpa told me not to. When? After the baseball game, he waited by the car after practice, said he had something to give me, said it was for you, but I had to wait for the right time. I sat down at the edge of the dining chair, rubbed my hands together just to feel something. He trusted you, I said. Mason shrugged. He wanted to say it. He just couldn't say it to your face. I nodded. My voice didn't want to come out. Robert's words were still hitting in waves. You did what I never could. You earned this. I'm proud of you. That last one cracked something wide open inside me. I didn't know how badly I needed to hear it until I did. Thanks, I finally said. Finally. Mason looked at me. You needed to hear him, not me. I let out a breath, leaned back, and stared up at the ceiling like it had answers. The chandelier above the table was swaying just slightly, maybe from the door slamming earlier, maybe from nothing at all. After all the noise, all the yelling, the manipulation, the power plays, it all came down to a 10-year-old who knew when to stay quiet. He didn't bring me back with speeches or drama. He didn't argue or beg. He just waited, held on, and handed over the truth when it mattered. That envelope sat under socks for months while the rest of them circled around Robert like vultures. And Mason knew. He knew. I stood up and stretched my back. Mason followed. You hungry? I asked. Starving. Want to hit the diner on 5th? I owe you pancakes. With bacon, he said. Bacon it is. We grabbed our jackets. I took one last look at the room, chairs pushed in, table cleared, the laptop still plugged into the wall. Everything in order. But for the first time in a long time, I was part of that order. Mason reached for my hand again without saying anything. And when we walked out that front door, I didn't feel like a man chasing what was taken from him. I felt like a man who finally got to keep what he built. Would you have trusted Mason with that envelope? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story hit you, like, follow, and don't miss the next one.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.